Next question, the member for Algoma, Manitoulin.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Natural Resources. Over the last 15 years, mills and forestry operations have closed all over northwestern Ontario. That includes at least 5 in Thunder Bay, 2 in Dryden, 2 in Kenora, 1 in Sioux Lookout, and 1 in Fort Frances. Those closures came with devastating job losses and hurt thousands of families. A company wants to use wood from the Crossroot Forest to bring back forestry jobs to Fort Frances. The town contends the company is transferring Crown fibre from the Crossroot Forest to its other operation in northwestern Ontario, contrary to the terms in a Sustainable Forest License Agreement. And the forest industry is in crisis again. Just last week, a couple of weeks ago in Thessalon, Midway Lumber has laid off 30% of their workforce as well. Will the minister tell the families in Fort Frances, Thessalon, and across the north that he will ensure that mills and forestry operations have the wood they need to operate and support the hundreds of direct and indirect jobs that depend on them?
Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Wood supply is a critical issue for my ministry and all across Ontario, and it is one of the things that in the past 15 years the previous government lost sight of the importance of forestry in this province, and we are not doing that. In fact, I've been holding a series of forestry roundtables throughout the province. Recently I was in Thunder Bay. That was the 5th of a series of 7 or 8 that we will have. I want to say to the member, the issue of wood fibre for the potential Fort Frances Mill, and I want to give my credit to my colleague from Kenora Rainy River, the Minister of Northern Development and Mines, for the work that he has been doing working with the town of Fort Frances to try to broker a solution to this. The reality is that we must wait until such time as there is a purchase for the mill in Fort Frances before we can discuss the issue of wood supply for any mill. There are mills currently working in the north. The Crossroot Forest under the SFL has commitments. Should a sale be finalized, we will reopen those discussions. Thank you very much.
Supplementary.
The mill sale cannot happen without a wood allocation to it. Again, to the minister, let me quote the MPP from Perry Salmuskoka, who, as PC critic, asked this question in 2014 to former Premier Wynne, and I quote, "The sustainable forest license in the Fort Frances area is controlled by the past operator of the paper mill. They're no longer interested in running the mill, but continue to control the Crown Forest, the Crossroot Forest. Don't you think the license to harvest wood, or at a minimum an economic supply of fibre from nearby forests, should go to the company willing to locate operations and reopen the mill in Fort Frances?" Minister, your government controls the wood rights on Crown lands. It also has the obligation to involve First Nations communities and meaningful consultations, but as the Liberals did before, this Ford government is sitting on their hands instead of taking an action.
Question.
Will the minister ensure that Fort Frances and Thessalon have the wood fibre they need?
Minister.
Well, the issue in Thessalon, as the member knows, is an issue of negotiations between Thessalon First Nation as well. It is not simply a matter of wood supply. The issue in the Crossroot Forest, as you know, there is a wood allocation that has been made, and the wood is being used in other mills. Should a deal be brokered together by someone who is prepared to operate the Fort Frances mill location, that is something that we would relook at that allocation. But I want to point out very much, our government would like nothing more than to see mills operating that have been closed in the north, that were closed under the previous government. We would love to see them operating, and that is why we have embarked on a new forest strategy to ensure that there is an adequate wood supply. We used to harvest 30 million cubic meters of fibre out of in Ontario, and we're 24, and we're down to about 15. If we can increase that by having a proper forest strategy, we can ensure that there are jobs, good jobs in the north. But it's the previous government that saw that dwindle down and saw jobs in the lost. We're focusing on jobs, creating jobs in the north.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, the member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. Our government for the people understands how significant the forestry sector is to the economy of Ontario. For 15 years, the previous government ignored and neglected an industry that is extremely important to communities across rural and northern Ontario. I know that the Premier and our Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry have both been working very hard to make Ontario open for business and open for jobs, including forestry. I was pleased to hear that businesses from my riding were invited to a roundtable in North Bay earlier this month. Can the minister inform the House who is being consulted to help build and regrow Ontario's forestry sector?
Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Parry Sound Muskoka for his question and the tremendous advocacy that he has had for his community and the forest industry for over 18 years in this chamber. He's right. We are making Ontario open for business and open for jobs. Since November, as I said in the previous question, we have embarked on forestry roundtables throughout the province as we develop a new forestry strategy that puts Ontario's forestry industry at the front. Not the back, like the previous government, where they ignored it for 15 years. We're putting it back at the front. It's a bedrock industry in this province, and we're going to treat it as such. Last Friday, I was in Thunder Bay, where I heard many great suggestions about how our government can reduce barriers and promote economic growth in this tremendously important industry. While the previous Liberal government stifled growth in the forestry sector by prioritizing special interest groups, our government for the people and my ministry will continue our work to make sure that Ontario is open for business and open for jobs.
Thank you. That concludes the time we have for question period today, but I recognize the Minister of Government and Consumer Services on a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just want to remind all the members of the Spring into Cider reception being hosted by the Ontario Craft Cider Association between 11:30 and 2 p.m. today down in the Legislative Dining Room in the sidebar area. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. We have a deferred vote on the motion for the third reading of Bill 68, an act with respect to community safety and policing. Calling the members, this will be a 5-minute bell.